Welcome to the Biz Buzz Podcast, where we're talking business. This is a SCORE podcast and go-to resource for entrepreneurs and businesses at every stage, from dreamers and startups to seasoned pros and Fortune 500s. If you're launching, growing, or just thinking about your next big idea, you're in the right place. Each episode, we bring you expert insights, practical tools, and the inspiration you need to take your business to the next level. This is the Biz Buzz, brought to you by the Greater Milwaukee Chamber of Commerce and powered by SCORE Southeast Wisconsin. Now here's your host and SCORE mentor, Jim Rossetti.
Steve, let me. I'm just picking up from where we left. You mentioned the word hunter, and what you mean by that is prospecting, right?
Prospecting, defining accounts, and going after the ones that are hard to get into by trying to communicate or direct mail or leaving literature or trying to make an appointment. That's hunting. And farming, of course, is hanging on to the business you have, which when you're doing 10, 12 million, you gotta hang on to existing business, but you gotta also go out and hunt for new business, because inevitably accounts have a half-life for whatever reason, and you have to bring in new business constantly. And over the years, no matter what accounts we lost, we always maintained at least equal sales or more sales, because guys were all hunting and bringing in new business.
Yeah,
the good ones.
Yeah, I'm glad you defined that, because listeners, especially people that are new to business, the terminology helps, and it helps to understand, what it's like. Even if you've got an existing business that's been in business for a long time, you still got to go out and prospect. You can't just rest on your laurels and say, "Hey, we got a network of business. We don't have to go hunting anymore."
Yeah, and that happens. But we would basically start people out with a certain amount of business, which just about equal their total income. They'd be on straight commission, but we start them out on X amount per year, and they'd have accounts that totaled just about that or a little bit less. So if they wanted to increase their income, they had to be hunters. That
so,
doesn't
Steve,
mean they were all hunters. A lot of them never made it, but
right.
It would basically it was a good way to employ people, because you never had to give them performance appraisals. You appraised them on how many accounts they opened and what their sales were. That made it very easy. And the producers, of course, were always bringing a new business. And the people that weren't, you give them some sales training and help them open up accounts. But some people aren't cut out for sales. Sales, let's put it this way. Life begins at the end of your comfort zone. And a lot of salesmen want to stay within their comfort zone. Yes. Calling on new accounts and trying to get in to see even hostile customers is getting outside your comfort zone. Now, a hunter is always outside his comfort zone. He's in the tall grass hunting, whereas some salesmen just aren't hunters. They're comfortable. And some companies want farmers. A big company with a lot of existing business, all he wants is a farmer. He doesn't want anybody. But we always wanted people who were bringing in new business. So we would every week publish the new sales that were made, big or small, so everybody else could see who's out hunting. And we'd have sales contests and things like that. That was really part of my dashboard, to look at the end of the year how many new sales each salesman had brought in, and you could see graphically who the hunters were.
Yeah, I'm glad you defined that, because I think a lot of people just seem to think it's going to come in the door, or if it's not coming in the door, they get discouraged and they want to pull the plug on something they started. But I think every business has got to kind of reinvent themselves every few years. They, don't ever get too comfortable where you can just sit back and rest on your laurels and say, well, it'll never end. And the worst thing, I think you'll agree with this, is if you get too few accounts that you're depending on to keep your business afloat, you got to go hunting.
Yes. Yeah. And it's amazing how some customers,
Yeah.
one customer, some companies, one customer could be half their sales.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
even if you're a manufacturer's rep or a distributor or whatever, or working for somebody else, you've got to bring in new business.
Right. Yeah.
But you have to maintain existing business. It's a juggling act, but
Yeah.
especially when a really good guy retires and he leaves several $1 million behind, you have to turn that over to some of the entry level people, and you got to be careful because you know you're paying them not to sell basically, and
Right.
you're uh,
Right.
and the way I started and the way a lot of us started was we had to make sales in order to make more money. So
Mm-hmm.
those that made sales succeeded, and then some people just quit because they couldn't make new sales and they got discouraged. Well, that's good. I never had to fire anybody because they'd leave uh,
Yeah.
because their income didn't go up. But the ones that the hunters were making some made more than me. I mean, it was unlimited income with our company, so you could make as much. You could pay for what you're worth. Let's put it that way.
Right. Right. And that's the merit system, I think, in America, free enterprise system. I think that's the way it works. And understanding that, now let me move over to you being a SCORE mentor. What possessed you to come on board with with an organization like SCORE and do this volunteer work free of charge? You're an experienced professional.
Well, when I was in college, and back in 1971, SCORE guy, and
Mm-hmm.
SCORE was about 10 years old then.
Mm-hmm.
Retired executive. It used to be called the Service Corps of Retired Executives.
Right.
SCORE. And
Right.
he came and talked to our business class. And of course, that's why I talk to business classes, because when you're in school, someone from the real world is really interesting, and people like to listen to what you
Sure.
say. And he was very wise. He told us basically his gist was what to expect in the real business world. And one thing he said was, there's no security except in the dictionary. You're not
Right.
secure in any job. Your only security is your record of achievement. And the other thing he said was, don't expect fairness. Life isn't fair. Customers aren't fair. Employers sometimes aren't fair. Somebody
Right.
might get promoted other than you, and you feel you're more qualified. That's what happened. And
Yeah.
so I was impressed, and I really didn't know what SCORE was then, except that they helped businesses and consulted and mentored. So anyway, 50 years later, when I retired, I had some time on my hands, and I thought I'm going to call SCORE. And I just like from the phone call, bang, I was in. And you take the training, and all of a sudden, right away, you're in front of clients.
Yep.
And,
Yep.
and you get over your fear because you figure, geez, can I help them, or are they going to
Yeah.
listen to me? Well, here you got a ready group of people who want to listen to you. And it's not like being at a hunting trip or a cocktail party and you're giving people advice. These are
Right.
people who want to listen to you. And,
Yep.
and you find out how much you know. In 50 years, you got a lot of common sense, a lot of SCORE advice isn't even business advice, it's just common sense.
Yeah.
Look at your
Yeah.
break-even point. If you're starting a business, look at your family burn rate. How long do you have to make this successful based on whatever your margins are? What are your margins? Maybe they're too low. But figure, I told someone the other day, it may be 3 years before you break even. And you
Right.
have the kind of money that last you through that period in order to be successful. And but this is all common life stuff. But I think
Yeah.
it's been fun. I've had probably 100 some clients now, and I really enjoy it.
I love it. I'll tell you. Yeah, you just that's a wealth of information that I'm so glad that you brought up. You mentioned the security factor, and in your own business, as you know and have discovered, and this is what a lot of startup people need to discover, is yes, you can set your own hours, but in the real world, your customers are your boss.
Yeah.
Your clients are your boss, and your prospective customers are your boss. So you better get used to it, because I think people jump into their own business thinking, "Oh, I won't have a boss. I can run things," but you do have a boss.
Yeah, and you find yourself working harder than you ever did
Yeah,
because it's on your
exactly.
mind all the time, which is
If
good.
they,
I mean,
if
but there is no break. I mean, there's no way to
right,
get away from a phone call. You got to learn to do it. You got to let your staff
sure,
be in charge, and they want to be in charge when you're gone. But yet, it's
right.
still hard um, to let go of that stress and relax. But you got to learn to do it.
Well, yeah, and if you're sitting home on a Sunday afternoon and something breaks out in your company, you may have to be on board and cover. You may have to give up your Sunday afternoon, and who knows how many Sunday afternoons you might have to give up as part of the. And I'm not saying this to get everybody frightened that it's going to get crazy like this all the time, but life happens,
Yeah,
and it
and
happens in
this
business.
is, you talk about a crisis happening. When
Yeah,
you're running a business, you're running it because you love it. And what happens on a Sunday
right.
afternoon is you start getting ideas. I never went anywhere, even at night. I'd have a notepad next to my bed because ideas would pop into your head. When I'm
Sure.
traveling, I always had a counting pad next to me, and
Yeah.
Sunday afternoon, you might get an idea, and all of a sudden, hey, I'm going to start writing this down, and because I love the business and I love ideas, and
Right.
that's what's so
Right.
neat about being in your own business is that it's uh, if you want to be in business, if you like business, it's your life, and
Right.
you gotta balance your family life and everything else with that. But you
Yep.
can't. I mean, people say I don't like my job, I hate going to work. Well, you're always on the job when you have your own business, but yet you
Right.
love it because you can come up with ideas and pursue ideas. And looking back on my career, there were products I came up with, and ideas I came up with, and
Sure. Yeah.
that I just wrote down at one point, and pretty soon it was a big part. Like a lot of the training we did for customers, we give seminars on how to run products and things like that, and that was a real competitive edge. But I probably wrote that down when I was traveling in a car, and I thought, I think I'm going to try this. So,
So you just hit on something that you created a competitive edge that your
yeah,
competitors didn't have, and I
yeah,
call that your unique selling proposition, or your USP.
yeah.
And I think that you've just identified that. I'm so glad you said that, Steve. You're right on target. Hey, let me ask you, as a mentor now for SCORE, what kind of things are you running into from the people or the clients that you're talking to? And
Well, I would say I divide them into three groups. Uh, the one group, and it's a lot like hiring salesmen and motivating
sure,
people and having to let people go and seeing which people made it. You can almost tell from the interview on whether a guy's going to be a good salesman by how inquisitive he is, how
yeah,
he calls you back, and how proactive he is,
yeah,
how he pins you down on the job, and this sort of thing. Uh, Same way with SCORE. You got some guys. I got some guys that set up the next appointment. I mean, I don't have to see it. They say, "When can we meet again?" How about 2 weeks? And then they send me an email with a appointment thing. And
uh,
they're really
yeah,
on the ball. And when I sit down every 2 weeks, I always give all my clients an action plan. Okay, here's what to do.
uh-huh,
Not too many things, but A, B, C, D.
right,
And the good ones, the top group, always do them. And here's what I've done, and it's
yeah,
really cool. That's what makes it all worthwhile. The next group of guys have kind of a fuzzy idea about what they want to do. It's not so much how motivated they are.
All right.
They're outside their comfort zone. They're thinking about the business. They're working an existing job, but they're very open to advice, and they, you kind of have a feeling that they're going to make it, but they're going to need a little bit more mentorship. And then there's probably the other third isn't necessarily a bunch of losers or anything. It's just that they have no idea. They think they have an idea, and that is a business, and it's not. An idea won't make you $1 million. The execution of the idea, step by hiring people and implementing it, and billing and collecting the bills, and creating a staff, leveraging yourself. That's what creates success. So they sometimes never really think about their burn rate or how much, I want to start a food truck. One person told me, do you have any money? No. But I'll get a loan. I said, well, do you have any assets to put behind the loan? As collateral? Oh, no. Well, but and you got to keep encouraging them, but say, well, I'll tell you what, why don't you go work for a food truck and see what the business is all about? And then and kind of get a feel for how they prepare the foods and how they stock and what they do on the truck and whether it's something you even like. And then maybe you could buy into that company, or maybe start with a confidence level you don't have now. And maybe you could get a loan. I'm amazed how many people with relatively few assets are able to get WIBIC loans or EVA loans or loans because they have a good business plan and they can sell themselves. So they might be able to do that. But if you want to win the Super, it's like I always say, somebody sits down by when I want to win the Super Bowl. Do you play football? No. Well, I think you should play a little football and just, decide whether you like the game and whether you're good at football, and then do this and do that. But you can't win the Super Bowl any more than you can, make money in business unless you have certain basics. And so a lot of score is, and you got to take time with these people and be understanding. And you never say through your training, that's a dumb idea or this or that. You just suggest things. I think you should talk to an attorney. I think you should, get a group of advisors together. And these are all the you got to give them the basic building blocks of getting into the business. So it's kind of like a little kid learning to walk and step by step. But that's a whole nother group. So you got these three groups of people. And I think it's quite a fulfilling experience as a SCORE mentor, because, and then if you haven't got enough to do, you can go through your files. I probably have 100 people I've worked with and just email them, say, hey, what's cooking? Give me an update. And some of them you never hear from. Some after the initial meeting, you never hear from them. Well, okay, that's fine. That's up to them. But a lot of them, it's gratifying to see how far they've come. And whether they consider you as part of that, they're responsible for this or that, doesn't matter. You're not looking for thanks. You're looking to help people be successful.
That is fabulous advice, Steve. Thank you. That is really, you're right, spot on with everything you just said. One of the things I do with these clients is I've got a 1-page, very simple business plan with about 8 points on it. And I shoot it over to them, usually on my first session with them. And then I ask them to fill this out and have it ready for me by the next session. Now, I don't want them to go too far into detail. Just give me some basics. And the next time we meet, or send me that business plan before we meet again, and then I will know exactly where the areas are that you really need a lot of work on. And because it's hard for me to try to dig out of them where they think they're weak or strong.
Yeah.
It really is. So, And I'm learning from doing these podcasts with mentors like you and Chuck Zamora and Lisa Foster. And I'm learning how you handle your mentoring sessions. It's teaching me as a SCORE mentor that I can pick up tips from you on just the way you're doing things. So I'm really happy for that.
Well, I use the business model canvas. In fact, I usually send that to them. I send it.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard sometimes online to get into that, but I'll copy
Right.
and paste it to a picture and email it and text it to them as well as email it to them.
Sure. Yeah.
I send them a letter. I mean, like you read my background
Yep.
and
Yep.
encouraging them in business and say, fill out the business model canvas. Now, that's a good asset test. Most of them do. And how fast they get that back and how much thought they put into it, you can tell
Right.
a lot about them just by
Yeah. Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
they are in starting a business. So I always like to get that. Plus, when I sit down with them, my time's better spent because I got a feeling, a business idea is awful fuzzy unless you put it on paper. And the
Right.
business model canvas allows them to do it very easily.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's what I do. And then I usually follow up the first session with an action plan. And then I keep I'm a dinosaur, I keep a vanilla file on everybody and put the action plan and business model canvas and everything in there. So when I go back before I talk to them, I can read that over so I don't mix up.
Chuck, I can, I mean, Steve, I have the same issue with people. I can tell a lot about the character of the client I'm talking to by how quickly they get back to me.
Yes.
And if the first session, I got to chase them down, I got to text them, I got to email them, I got to put a phone call into them, I've got to send them a snail mail, then I can tell right from the get-go that they're really not that serious. But I don't.
That. I've had a few who will not return the calls.
Right.
They wanted help, and I've had maybe a half dozen of them the last 3 or 4 years. And
Sure.
SCORE will, after 3 attempts, they say, give them back the SCORE. And you get a little mad. Here I am trying to help somebody, and they won't even return my call.
Yeah.
I mean, we deserve some respect too. So but SCORE is good about that.
Yeah, and you're and one of the things in the first session that I have, I call it a get acquainted session, because we get these clients come to us and we get very little information on the business they want to start. Sometimes they don't even say what kind of business they want to start. So we got to pick their brains on the first session and just get up to speed so we're briefed on what they want to do. And that's what I try to make my first session as a briefing. Well, just to get me up to speed. So
how do you I can tell there's certain guys that are women who are, you can just tell they've been around the block. Either some are already in business and have issues.
Right. Sure.
And they're pretty mature, or their business plan the business they're in is kind of complicated, because I certainly don't know about, I can get in uncharted waters. So I will sit down face to face with them. And I'd say about a third, and maybe it's the third that are the best, I'll sit down with, because when you've got eye contact and it's complicated, you really come out understanding what they're doing and this sort of thing. And then some I'll Zoom with, and some I'll, handle over the phone. It really depends on the nature of the business and who I'm dealing with.
Yeah. That's a good tip, because I used to sit face to face with every one of my clients way before we were using Zoom and all. I've been doing this for about 20 years with SCORE, so I'm an old timer.
Yeah.
And I went to Zoom after COVID came in and Google Meet and all that stuff. But sitting face to face, just like you said, you really get to read body language better. You really
Yeah.
get to eyeball better, and you can see how serious people are. Really, first class. I mean, it's laid out very. So I'm going to get back to doing the face to face, but I may still be selective on where I do it because a lot of them are not all that serious. I don't rain on their parade ever, just like you said, and I don't ever tell them it's a dumb idea.
Yeah.
Every idea to me is worth giving some credence to until we say it doesn't work and we regroup a little bit.
Yeah.
But I try to get them into this networking world too, and reaching out more and expanding their sphere of influence. Because I've had people come to me that are newcomers to the United States. They're launching their business. They know nobody, absolutely nobody. And I say the first thing you really need to do is get out there and start connecting. And
Yeah.
the best place to start is a Chamber of Commerce. You don't have to join it to go to their business after hours stuff.
Yeah.
You can go in the morning. You can go business before hours, business after hours. Those are great places to connect and to meet people that are entrepreneurs and so.
Yeah. I mean, when you have an immigrant, I had one who bought a convenience store down on the south side, and he was from Burma. Amazing story.
Sure.
And he lived in Thailand for a while, and this and that, and very industrial, very hard.
Yeah.
So I go down and sit behind the glass, and I've been down there several times, sit behind the glass, and I'd have to wait until some customer bought something. But he outkicked his coverage. I mean, he couldn't get a loan once he bought it, and he couldn't get the approval to take food stamps because you got to be approved. You got to have a stock of all the things that food stamps pay for.
Oh, SNAP!
The city was dragging their feet, so he was out of the stock or had to throw it out. Some were perishables like milk. And finally, I was just a cheerleader. I kept encouraging. I said, "You go down there," and he had to wait 6 months to try the food stamp thing again. I said, "Most of your business is food stamps, right? So you walk in there and you talk to the guy and tell him that you bought 2 loads of perishables and they'll throw them both out at great expense, and he's got to get the food stamp permit." So, and he did it. The guy came right away and said, "Okay," But I mean, a lot of times you're just a cheerleader for these guys and telling them we believe in the American system, and we know that people, even bureaucrats, can be pretty fair, and especially to a guy like this. So I went down there, and now he's making it and this and that. But so the client kind of dictated how many times I physically met with him. But I loved it. I loved going down there every time and seeing the progress we make. And I told him that he couldn't get a loan. I told him to leverage his suppliers. You'd be surprised how suppliers, if they met him and believe in him, they're going to give him a little extra 30 days credit. So now he's got money for little from family and creditors. He got a Kiva loan, and he, it's life is incremental, and success in business is incremental, and it's just like sports. You got good and bad plays, good and bad quarters, and just keep playing the game. You got to keep playing it, and don't let it get to you, because business is all about overcoming obstacles. It's just when you solve these obstacles, you move up to a new level of business with a whole new set of obstacles. So that's what business is about, and that's what you got to tell these. And in America, we know where to go. We know lawyers. We know more than we know. And so we can really help these people by giving them names. And sometimes you call these lawyers and say, "Look, this guy's got nothing. He's just trying." I don't know if you do, work for things like this, but why don't you just talk to them, give them some advice? And I've had pretty big lawyers in town talk to these people or accountants, give them a little advice for no charge. And people are happy to do that. Americans are good people.
Yeah. Chuck, you are a treasure. Let me tell you, you are a treasure. I think that's what we're mentors, and I think what we have to be is positive encouragers, and that's what you are. You're I've had clients come to me, they got denied on one loan the first time out of the box. And I said, you're going to give up and walk away because of one discouragement? I said, no. You know how many times I've been turned down? I tell them my story. I said, you haven't scratched the surface yet. So get back in the game. The game's not over. You just had a bad play. That's one play. I said, there's 4 downs. You got 3 more downs to go. And that's, but I said, and that's, I think we have to be people that won't let them quit, and that's part of it. Perseverance is part of being in business. It's a strong part.
Yeah. And, most people, especially loans, are really a problem for a lot of people. Yeah. And you have to go to 5, 6 bankers before one will sit down with you. But, the bankers are working for somebody else, and they're
sure.
Yeah. Sometimes it's the nonprofits, there's community organizations that give loans to local community businesses.
Yeah.
And with a good guy running it, who stuck out his neck, and his wife and baby were behind the glass there sitting on a mattress, and playing. And people are coming in and buying things with food stamps. That was a guy and we can't. I mean, I would have helped them if I could, but I can't as a mentor. But if he needed a short-term loan, I mean, there are people who look at this guy and say, "You're damn right, I'll give you some money." And and so they're out there. But and you can go online and I send people a lot of lists of local organizations that lend money. And the timing's wrong. They do it in January or February and it's March, it's September. But just keep trying because you will get money.
Right.
So, but that's the experience we have as business people who've lived a long life that they don't have. And look at the people that helped us when we were young.
Right. Exactly.
So we're able to really do some good.
Chuck, you are hitting stuff so on target here today. And one of the things, talking about banks, making the loans, there's auditors that check the banks too, regulator auditors. So the banks really can't be making a loan that's not secured by something, 100% loans and new businesses and so forth. But one of the things I try to tell these people is before you go into the bank, call and ask, do they loan to restaurants? Do they loan to car repair shops? Do they loan to find out what their strong suit is? Before you go and do a little homework on the bank, find out who the loan officer is. Find out a little bit about the loan officer. Make your first call getting to know the loan officer before you go in. Yeah. And ask him if he's going to ask me questions, because I want to be prepared. And they're going to ask you questions about the business, and you should be able to answer them right off the top of your head. Don't sit there and well, I don't know. Get sharp, crisp, and clean when you go into the bank. Wear a nice shirt, wear a tie.
It's a job interview. I mean, face it. It's nothing different from a job interview. You research the company, you got your facts and figures together, and it's going to be a good interview if you go in prepared. And that's a good point. I never really thought about that with the bank. Because, it's like on TV, it's kind of a guy who's looking at you like, why should I give you money? And his thinking about what his boss thinks if he can't back up the money.
I like to turn it around. I want you to be sitting in a seat saying, why should I come to your bank for a loan when I can shop a lot of other banks? I'm the customer. I'm the client here. I want to interview you as much as you want to interview me.
Absolutely.
So this has been a great interview, Chuck. I keep calling you Chuck. We just did a podcast with Chuck Zamora.
Okay. Well, I've been called a lot worse, so
Steve, you are absolutely a complete storehouse of wealth, and I really appreciate what you are doing. And it's mentors like you that are keeping SCORE alive and well, and that's why we're doing a heck of a job, really. I thank you so much for your service to these people. So
thanks for tuning in to the Biz Buzz, powered by SCORE Southeast Wisconsin and brought to you by the Greater Milwaukee Chamber of Commerce. If you found today's episode helpful, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with a friend, fellow entrepreneur, or business leader. Want more resources or mentorship support? Visit us at SCORE.org to connect with a local mentor and keep your business moving forward. Until next time, keep hustling, keep dreaming, and keep building your business with SCORE.